Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about PSP emulation with PPSSPP, and PPSSPP just dropped version 1.17. Its first big release of 2024. Now, we've talked about a lot of these improvements in previous videos, but at a high level here, we've got a whole bunch of bug fixes, performance improvements, optimizations, and brand new features. I'll drop a link to this full changelog in the description below in the event that you wanted to check it out. There's even game-specific performance improvements and fixes, like Naruto Ultimate Ninja Heroes 2, Tactics Ogre, and even more. And if you're on Android, and you've got a Snapdragon CPU, you'll want to note this. They've added in support for Adreno tools. You can load custom Vulkan drivers. But this support is not available on the Google Play Store builds, only on the GitHub builds. If you are curious about Adreno tools and installing your own custom drivers, I'll drop a link to the Adreno tools drivers GitHub in the description below. From here, you can find the latest Qualcomm drivers, as well as the latest Mesa Turnip drivers. But getting back to the updates before I go down a rabbit hole, and you can now track your total time played per game. CHD file format is now supported. CHD files are arguably a little bit more compressed than ISOs. So if you are running out of space, you may want to check out the CHD file format. And there's been some controller and touchscreen fixes. For example, improved tilt and mouse input supported on Android. If you haven't updated PPSSPP in a while, it may be worth picking up the latest version. It's 100% free and it's open source. And furthermore here, if you do have an Android device with a Snapdragon CPU, head to ppsspp.org and click on Downloads. And then scroll down under Automated PPSSPP builds and pick up the latest version for Android. This version here should have Adreno tools supported. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo 64 emulation with RMG, which stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Rosalie's Mupen GUI, depending on how you want to interpret that. And RMG just got a small but nice update. So at the time of filming, version 0.5.7 is the latest update. We've got some fixes, a change here to the default screenshot directory on Linux. And they've updated the Mupen 64 Plus core. Moving on, and if you've got a Meta Quest, you're going to like this update. CitraVR has dropped on GitHub. This is a port of Citra, not an official version of Citra. And it's designed for playing 3DS homebrew and personal game backups in 3D on the go on the Meta Quest. So at the time of filming, CitraVR Beta version 0.3.1 is the latest update. On the Quest 2, they've set the default internal resolution down to 3 times from 5 times. On the Quest 2 and Quest Pro, they've set that default internal resolution down to 2 times instead of 5 times. I'm guessing there's a big performance bump by doing this. And there's a 3% reduction in GPU utilization. CitraVR is 100% free, it's open source. And I do want to stress this, it's not officially supported by the Citra team. So if you're having issues with it, there's no sense in asking the Citra team because they probably won't be able to help you. Moving on, and we're talking about arguably one of the best looking versions of Metroid for the NES, and this is a mod. Metroid HD 2.0, the trailer for this thing just dropped, as well as the mod. Now, I'm not joking with you here, I'm not exaggerating, this mod is absolutely gorgeous. I'll drop a link to a couple of other YouTube videos in the description below that may be worth checking out. One is a before and after comparison, and another one is an installation customization tutorial. There is one caveat though. At the time of filming, this is only compatible with Mezen 2, which is available for Windows and Linux. Next up, this is interesting information. We're talking about Shrek, Ogres, and Dronkeys, but not this game in specific, about what this game could have been. Interestingly enough, I found out about this one through Brandon Sheffield on Twitter. And it says, here's a proposed 2007 Shrek Babies DS game from Way Forward, complete with notes from DreamWorks. If you want to learn more about this and about stuff that goes on behind the scenes, it's all been archived over on archive.org. I'll drop a link in the description below. There's a PDF here that's about 9 pages long. Now, based on what I read, I don't necessarily think I'd play Shrek Babies, but at the same time here, I've never played Ogres and Dronkeys. If you have, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. But moving on, and next up, we're talking about something I have played and I've enjoyed quite a bit, and that's Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. It appears that Limited Run is re-releasing this game for a final time. However, unfortunately, they're already sold out, both the regular edition at $35 and the collector's edition at $65. I'm assuming it was either low stock or extremely popular, or maybe even both. The cover art on the package, though, is a little bit different than the regular edition, and unsurprisingly, it appears it's already being scalped pretty heavily. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about Stardew Valley, and it appears a big update is just around the corner. The developer says 1.6 ended up being a little larger in scope than originally planned. I'm done adding major new content to it now, though, and it's in a bug fixing and polishing phase until it's ready for release. Now, Stardew Valley was originally released back in 2016, and I'm very happy to see the game is still receiving updates. If you're a fan of Stardew Valley, let me know in the comments below. And speaking about new content, next up we're talking about Hogwarts Legacy, and if you played this game on anything other than PlayStation, you're gonna like this news. They say, as we near the 1-year anniversary of Hogwarts Legacy, we wanted to let our community know that the Hogwarts Legacy PlayStation exclusive content will be available on other platforms later this summer, along with additional updates and features for the game. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the PlayStation exclusive content for Hogwarts Legacy is the Haunted Hogsmeade quest. I could be wrong, there could be more. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Next up, we're quickly talking about the rumored Switch 2, and the rumor mills keep swirling here, and we have some potential updates. Apparently, Nintendo's next Switch coming this year will feature an 8-inch LCD screen. Now, interestingly enough, this is a 1-inch upgrade over the current Nintendo Switch OLED, which is 7 inches. However, the screen is a bit of a downgrade. You're going from OLED to LCD. I'm assuming Nintendo is doing this due to cost, but I could be wrong. To be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised that Nintendo is making this move. I mean, I would have thought that OLED is the future. I mean, even the Steam Deck just got an OLED version. I guess this wouldn't be the first time Nintendo makes a head-scratching move, but again, this is just a rumor, so we're gonna have to wait and see. But next up, we're quickly talking about one of my favorite Linux distributions, and that's EndeavourOS. And EndeavourOS just released a brand new ISO. So at the time of filming, if you pick up the latest Galileo Neo ISO right from EndeavourOS's website, it'll ship with Linux kernel 6.7.1. On top of that, there's a number of bug fixes, including one for the Plasma Live environment with machines running legacy Intel graphics. Now, EndeavourOS is 100% free, it's open source, and if you already have it, you don't really need to download the new ISO. I mean, it's built on Arch and it's a rolling release. And speaking about Linux, next up we're talking about Wine, which stands for Wine is Not an Emulator. And Wine Development version 9.1 just released. So in this release, they've got a number of input method improvements, bug fixes, and even more. Now, at the time of filming, there's a total of 42 bug fixes. Included in here is stuff from MAME, as well as Dead Rising encountering infinite loading when starting a new game, and Lego racers crashing when clicking on the configuration commands. Moving on, and we're still talking about Linux, and this time about one of my favorite services, Flathub. And Flathub has just announced they've got over 1 million active users. Fun fact here, I am one of them. And for the milestones, they've got 1.6 billion downloads. Flathub is doing pretty good. And fun fact here, among the things that are driving the growth for Flathub, they're attributing the Steam Deck for a big part of it. Now, don't get me wrong here. There's a lot of people who don't like Flathub. They think flat packs are bloated and unnecessary, amongst other things. I'm a big fan of Flathub. I love the containerized approach. It makes things simple and straightforward when getting apps. Next up, we're quickly talking about Blender. And if you use Blender for your 3D needs, you might like this information. Apparently, Roblox has joined Blender's development fund, helping fund the future development of this program. So Roblox officially joins the rank with a whole bunch of other big companies helping out Blender. And Roblox is sitting pretty in the silver tier. Next up, we're talking about the ASUS ROG Ally, and people who have just purchased one of these might be upset about this news. Apparently here, ASUS is going to launch a 2nd generation ROG Ally this year. I'll drop a link to the article in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. The quote here is as follows: "We most likely will launch a 2nd generation this year. We will still keep the Windows features, but we will focus more on gaming. Unfortunately, they kind of left us hanging. We don't have any more details, and I'm hoping this is going to be a minor refresh, maybe an OLED screen, maybe some minor tweaks and fixes. Maybe some more RAM, I don't know here, but I'm hoping it's not going to be a completely brand new version of it. I mean, the ROG Ally was just released mid last year. It's not even a year old at this point. And for those people who just bought one, they'd be kind of left in the dust if ASUS is already moving on to the next one. And speaking about being left in the dust, next up we're talking about Bloodborne Kart. And if you've watched some of my previous videos, we've talked about this game beforehand. It's not an official game, it's a fan game. And apparently Sony has contacted them and is shutting things down. However, fortunately, the game isn't dead. They have to scrub some branding off, and it's no longer going to be called Bloodborne Kart. The developers flat out say, don't worry, the game is still coming out. It'll just look slightly different. I'll drop a link to their full announcement in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. And on a side note, if you need a bit of a laugh, check out their comments section. Sony acknowledging the existence of Bloodborne is wild. This confirms Bloodborne Kart is canon. Also, I'm surprised Sony knows what Bloodborne is. Next up, if you're a fan of Final Fight, but not a fan of Final Fight on the Amiga, you may be a fan of Final Fight Enhanced, which is an enhanced version of Final Fight for the Amiga. So this very big mod of the game has been in development for 3 years. There's a whole bunch of improvements here, including an introduction of Maki as a playable character. I'd argue the original Final Fight on the Amiga left a lot to be desired, but I'll let you make that decision on your own, and I'll drop both videos in the description below. Next up, we're talking about multiple arcade machine emulation on Android with MAME4Droid 2024, and MAME4Droid 2024 just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, version 1.7.4 is the latest update. I think some people are going to like these changes, and I think some people might not like them. They've implemented a new OpenGLES 3.2 renderer with advanced post-processing effects using shaders. They've added speed hacks to improve performance in games like Killer Instinct. And they fixed video stuttering on some occasions and improved audio latency. So I will say, while a lot of people don't care about accuracy and just want the game to play, some people who care about accuracy are not going to like those speed hacks. And speaking about Android, and speaking about news some people might not like, although this one's much more black and white. We're talking about NieR Reincarnation, and Square Enix dropped some pretty big news. You can find this information right on the NieR Reincarnation website, and they say, we regret to inform you that NieR Reincarnation will be ending service with the conclusion of The People and the World. The final chapter of The People and the World is planned to be released on March 28th. The game will run for a month following the final chapter's release until April 29th, when the service will officially end. Unless I'm missing something, 1 month doesn't seem like a whole lot here. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. It seems pretty rushed. Moving on, and this is arguably a fun one. If you were ever interested in jailbreaking a PS5 or learning about it, Modern Vintage Gamer has it covered. He's released a brand new video called The PS5 Jailbreak is Here, and it's looking good. The video itself isn't even 15 minutes long. It's super interesting, and I do recommend checking it out. I'll drop a link in the description below. As for PS5 emulation, it is still a ways off, so don't worry about that just yet. And speaking about super interesting, have you ever wondered what the original NES version of Punch Out would look like in 3D? Well, now you don't have to wonder. I'll drop a link to this tweet in the description below. I've got no idea how far this one's going to go, but it's being worked on by the same person who developed 3D Sen, and this one's available on Steam, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. And speaking about crazy stuff, next up we're talking about Portal, but in mixed reality. If you ever wanted to see what this could look like, well, here is your chance. At the time of filming, this is just a demo experiment for the MetaQuest 3, but I am hoping it gets worked on even more. I mean, this is pretty cool. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.